Item C, Winter 1012, the resolution to enhance the media transparency of the Michigan Student Assembly. Are there any motions to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any objections? Seeing no one has consent. Yay! All right. Great. Back to business. Exactly. Item D, Winter 10-008, a resolution for MSA to support the passage of House Bill 4876, the Medical Amnesty Act, in the Michigan Senate. At this time, the floor is open. There's been a motion. There's a second. Are there any objections?
Object to the question?
Yes.
Since this was submitted, I guess, a little over a week ago, I'm curious if the EOC should give an update as to the status of the bill.
Sure. As it currently stands, the bill sits in the Committee on Judiciary in the Michigan Senate. As the resolution states, it passed the Michigan House of Representatives by a vote of 98-7, if my memory serves me correctly. And as of now, it's still in committee in the Senate. So we're going to be lobbying and working with the Students Association of Michigan and the Republican chairman of that committee to try and get this bill moving. But as of now, it's still in committee, and people tell me that it's going to be there for the foreseeable future because people have, our legislators have elections to win in November. But we're going to do our best to make sure that they recognize that this is an issue that we care about.
Thank you. All right. Are there any further objections to approving item D? Seeing none, we have consent. Yay! All right. Moving into new business. At this time, we have Winter 2010 Resolution 10, a resolution. I do not. A resolution support the new Students for Progressive Governance constitutional ballot question. I will yield to Mike Loro.
Thanks, and sorry for the typo in there. It will be fixed for next week. So at this point, I'd actually just like to go through the constitution that the student group S4PG, certainly there's a lot of members in this room, helped write and field any questions and sort of bring you through the new proposed structure. We started trying to get 1,000 signatures to place this on the ballot for the election coming up. I hope everyone has had a chance to take a look at this copy. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at this copy? Yes, great. Okay. I just sort of want to go through, obviously we know the current MSA structure is pretty broken. You can see in the back of your packet, if you flip it over, the fact that there's so many overlapping bodies, steering, exec, say the assembly, CSJ, there really isn't a coherent structure in which to work. The government is easily able to fail. And the idea with this new constitution, which was written in collaboration with about 60 people over the course of 3 months, it's in its 1141st revision, thanks to Elson, who kept track. I can't believe how he did that. But anyways, I want to sort of start with the beginning and sort of work through it really quickly and sort of explain each section to you so you feel comfortable, or at least you feel comfortable asking questions. So first, the first article, student governance, is very similar to the current Constitution. Authority is directly derived from the students. Governments are able to be created in housing, co-ops, fraternities, everything that we have right now. The Supremacy Clause basically states that this Constitution is the law of the land. However, anything that is not stated in this Constitution directly devolves to the subsidiary student governments. So, 10th Amendment right there. So, Article 2, the Central Legislature, this is where we're going to get into some of the changes that I'd like to hear from you about. And certainly feel free to check out the language in this and direct my attention to any certain line number that you'd like. So the legislature is going to be basically the same body like this. There's going to be an assembly, which is the main legislative body, which will consist of representatives from each degree granting unit as defined by the University Board of Regents, with a certain number of seats. Basically, it's the same number of seats as it is right now, except the divisor, the divisor is 400 instead of 450. So it means that that there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 more seats in some of those colleges. Let's move on here. The Assembly will no longer be chaired by the executives. This new Constitution is all about a separation of power and checks and balances. So the Assembly will have the ability to elect from within itself a chair, a vice chair, or a speaker, a vice speaker, and any other officers it deems prudent. So, you know, it's going to have the same powers as well, levy dues, and it's also going to have the ability to create legislative committees. Now, these committees are going to hopefully work much like the current committees do. You're going to have probably one on the budget, one on university appointments, etc., one on external relations. But we didn't put it in this Constitution because we feel that in order for this document to survive and move along and sort of grow, it needs to be sort of defined by the new Assembly that adopts it. So everything right here is very expandable. There's no limits, and there's very few limits to have it no ceilings, to have it last as we move forward. Specifically, I'd like to draw your attention to lines 99 through 101, where the Assembly shall produce, publish, and maintain an Assembly register as to account for Assembly proceedings. So this is actually going to be in the Constitution that we have to be transparent, that we have to be showing our stuff, that we have to be sort of out there explaining to Michigan students exactly what we're doing here, which I think is really important. The second sort of piece of this legislative branch is something that's quite new and that I'm very, very excited about. It's called the University Council. The University Council is going to be a body that is comprised of representatives from each of the quote-unquote subsidiary student governments, the school or college governments. And that body will have the ability to basically pass legislation onto the Assembly's, or place legislation onto the Assembly's agenda. So, for instance, if there is an initiative starting in LSASG, they can vote to bring it up to the University Council, who can then place it on the agenda of MSA. The idea there is to move us from a culture of isolation to that of collaboration. We want, right now, as you know, this university is so decentralized, I, as the Vice President of MSA, have no clue what is going on in some of the other student governments on campus, and I think that that's actually fundamentally wrong. I think there needs to be a place where students can come together and students can organize. If you think about Stop the Hike last year, which fought for lower tuition rates within the university, they had to go to each separate student government, pass a resolution. It probably took them like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I'm not exactly sure on the timeline. But that's an incredible amount of hoops to jump through as a student organization looking to change something here in Michigan. The idea of the University Council is to create a place where one can go to sort of have their voice heard in many different circles at once. And that body will also have the ability to place resolutions or place items on the Assembly's agenda so as to keep not only their representatives accountable, but also allow for initiatives to originate in one place and go all the way up to the central student government, but also devolve down. They can start in, LSASG, go to the University Council, and then move down to the Law School Student Senate, or the Med School Student Council, or Rackham Student Government, or CNEAS. So there's these fantastic ways for collaboration to occur underneath this system. So that's just a broad overview. But that's why I really like that system. The council will also have the authority to basically try the president or any other officer being impeached. So for instance, the Assembly, since there are separation of powers, has the ability to impeach an executive. And if that happens, it goes to the University Council, and there's certain restrictions on what quorum is set for the University Council in that case. I believe it's half of the degree-granting units need to be present, or representation from the degree-granting units have to be present to ensure that you're receiving a fair trial. The second thing, or the executive branch that I'd like to draw your attention to, is actually one of the vast improvements, I think, internally that we can look at as MSA. And you can find that on page 5, starting on page 5. The executive branch is going to be headed up, much like it is right now, with a president and vice president who are popularly elected by the student body. Then the president will choose 4 other executives and appoint them with the advice and consent of the Assembly. Now there is an extra executive there. So we have the treasurer in this Constitution, we have the student general counsel in this Constitution, we have the chief of staff in this Constitution, but we also have a new executive called the chief programming officer.